excited about that. So, looks like my computer is starting to want to work, which is great. So there is that. So first of all, let's talk about this concept of ethics. What is ethics? How would you define it, or what do you already know about ethics?
Moral character.
Okay, it has something to do with moral character. Ethics. Yes, sir.
Establish guidelines on conduct that kind of govern your conduct, the way you engage.
Okay, so it's a set of rules that covers your conduct and how you engage with whom? With other individuals. Yeah. Okay, all right. It looks a little grandiose, but we'll keep going. So we're going to talk a lot about those concepts that are involved with ethics and what ethics is, and how, as folks who are in the ministry, how do we behave and act in a way that is in concordance with God's Word, that builds our relationships with man, and keeps us in the spirit of being earnest in everything that we do, being honest in what we do. All right? One of my favorite scriptures is Luke 2:52. And Jesus grew in stature and in favor with God and man. And sometimes we oftentimes find ourselves in a place where we will be in tune with God, but disenfranchise ourselves from our human relationships. And so part of this presentation, we will talk about the fact that our relationships with each other is our relationship with God. All right? That one of the core commandments is that we love one another. And the only way that we can love one another is that God be in us and that we love everyone. All right? So let's start with page 2. Okay. So I want you to turn to page 2. I'm going to show a video. And I want you to watch the video, and then we'll talk about what you notice and what you see in the video. All right? So here we go. Let me make sure my sound is up. So what did you notice in that video clip?
He wanted to be with people noticing him.
Okay, he wanted people to notice him. What else? He was seeking attention. All right, what else? What was that, man? You saw learned behavior. What was that? He kept repeating his actions. Okay. All right, what's that? His head must be really heavy. Okay. All right. Can we assume that this is probably not his first time doing this? Okay, we can make that assumption. All right. Can we also assume that when he was born from his mother's womb, that this was not a behavior that he exhibited that particular first day? Okay. So we understand that this is probably a learned behavior, right? So here's my core question for you. Why does this child do this? Why is he behaving in this way? Because what? He's lacking something. What else? What were you saying, ma'am? That he gets the attention that he wants at that moment? Yes, sir.
Because that's the way he has the parents trained.
Okay, that's how he has the parents trained. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Well, I was just thinking that he just wants a lot of attention, and obviously the parent has gotten to a degree where he's so spoiled, so now she wants to break the pattern, but it's embedded in him.
Okay, so there's a pattern that's been embedded in him. That's not being curtailed. That's not being cut off. Right?
Everybody in the place reinforces the dog. Everybody's reinforcing it.
I don't know. Anybody else find the dog really funny? Right? Okay. So they're reinforcing what he's doing. Okay. So those are all good reasons as to why the kid is doing this. But my core question is, when will the child stop doing that? Yes, ma'am.
When the parents start taking control and teaching them wisdom.
Okay, when the parents start taking control and teaching him discipline. All right, when else? When the child would.
When they change their reaction.
When they change their reaction to. Okay, so let me back up, because part of my premise is that I understand that the child wasn't born acting like this. That it is in some way learned behavior. And he exhibits that behavior because in some way it has what? It's worked. It's worked. And so if this behavior has worked in the past, we're smart people. Right? So if it's worked in the past, it's okay for me to assume that it will work when? Now. Right? So it's worked in the past. So given all things being equal, more than likely, if I had that behavior in the past work, it should work now, which also means that it also should work when? In the future. All right? So when will this child change their behavior? When it doesn't work? Is it working now? No. And it keeps doing the same behavior. Might not change. When will the child make the change in behavior? The child will make the behavior change when he understands that it doesn't work. All right? So when we talk about our human interactions, one of the things that's important for us to realize is that people can learn, change, and grow. Who I am today is not predicated on my genetic makeup. Who I am today is not based on all the things that have happened to me in the past. I want to put that out there. Who I am today will not determine what I can be tomorrow. What will determine what I can be tomorrow? All the decisions that I make from today until tomorrow happens. Anybody who ever has bad credit, one of the things I tell them is pay your bills today. You want to have good credit? Start having good credit today. Right? So people can learn, change, and grow. All behavior is goal-directed. All right? Every time someone acts in a certain way, it is because there is some kind of goal in mind. Now, for children in particular, they may not necessarily be articulate in being able to state what their goal is, but there's something that they're doing that they're going after. All right? People also do what makes sense to them, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else or to us. Right? So people do what makes sense to them. And attitude is a response to a goal. All right? How many folks have been told what an attitude is, or that you've had an attitude? Anyone? All right? So when people were talking about that, what were they talking about that you have an attitude?
Sometimes it's the way you respond to something.
Okay, sometimes it's the way you respond to things. Yes, ma'am.
It's true, your face expression, what your expression is when people look at you.
Okay, so it's your facial expression. You know, my parents used to say, boy, you better fix your face. Right? What else is an attitude?
It doesn't line up with their expectation of the way you should react. There's a comparison that's made.
Okay, so there's a
You have an attitude. They compare it to something.
they compare your attitude to something, your facial expressions to something. There's a disconnect in some way. All right, what else is an attitude?
Way you walk.
It's the way you walk, right? Yeah. Right? Or more commonly with the kids now.
Yeah, that's true.
You know. And I gotta say, I apologize for all of that, because you know, me and my crew, we started that. You know, no, I mean, like my generation started it, not me. Just, you know, I'm not Al Gore. I didn't create the internet. You know, but my generation, we started that, so it's scary. But I want to give you another way to think about an attitude, because I always had problems with that, because my parents would always tell me or try to correct me about my attitude. And I remember one instance where they said, boy, you better learn how to act. And as a matter of fact, go to your room till you learn how to act. Anybody ever been that experience? Yeah. So I'm in my room for a while, and then I stepped out because I figured it out. And I say, to be or not to be? Needless to say, I spent a lot of time in my room. But it always confused me about this attitude and what people were talking about. And then it clicked for me one day. So my dad was a pastor. So on Sunday, we went to church from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We stopped at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. So we were in service all day. So Friday night, I asked my dad to borrow the car. Because my dad loves me, what does he say? No. He says, yes, he loves me, right? So I get the car, and I'm hanging out with my friends, and I even put gas in the car before I bring it back. I come in way before curfew. I say my dad has what kind of an attitude? A good attitude. And what does my dad say about my attitude? That it is also a good attitude, right? So Sunday comes. My best friend Dexter calls at 11 for me to pick him up for a movie at 12. What do I know about church on Sunday? It's mandatory. So, you know, but I'm feeling gutsy. You know, I'm young. I'm foolish. So, you know, I'm thinking I can gamble on Jesus. Come on, Jesus, hook a brother up, right? So I go up to my dad and I say, you know, Dad, can I borrow the car? And what does my dad say? No. Not only does he say no, but he gives me a sermon on how I'm leading people to hell. You know, every negative consequence in my family was going to hell. And either you were going to go there on your own or he was going to send you there. Right? So as a consequence of that action, what kind of attitude do I say that my father has?
Bad.
He has a bad attitude. Consequently, what does he say about my attitude?
Bad.
That it is also bad. So what is it that actually determines one's attitude? So let's go back to the examples. When I got the car, I had a good attitude. When I was denied access to the car, I had a bad attitude. What determines an attitude? Your goal. Your goal determines one's attitude. Anyone have teenagers, been around teenagers, been a teenager? Right? When teenagers are denied access to things that they want in achieving their goal, they have the funkiest, nastiest attitude. You're just like, do I know this person? Who is this? Right? But at the same time, when they get access to their goal or they get what they want, it's like they turn into cats. They purr You know, they want to be all up under you. You know, they even get saliva in the corner of them. No, I'm just teasing. Right? But they get to be the sweetest creatures on the planet when they get access to what they want. So when you meet a person who has a negative attitude, what's the one thing that you know about them for sure? They're not accomplishing their goal. Right? So when someone has a nasty attitude, it is clear that there is a goal in their life that they have not reached. And so as a person who's working with them in ministry, as a person who's working with them even in our jobs, we have two responsibilities to them at that point. When we encounter that negative or bad attitude, there are two responses that should come from us. One is to help them what? Reach their goal. Right? So we should help them reach their goal. The second is what? If their goal is not reachable, we need to help them find a new goal. Right? So a lot of times my parents would chastise me because my goal and their goal, the contrast, were not the same. When my goal and my parents' goals were the same, they said I would have a good attitude, I would be rewarded for that. When our goals were opposite, because there's a power differential, right? And there's a respect differential, then they would say that I had the bad attitude. And so at some point, I would have to redirect what my goals were. Okay? So attitude is a response to a goal. And a lot of times we talk about that emotional stuff, and that's great. That's well and good. But that doesn't help us move or change behaviors. And so I would encourage you, particularly if you're working with kids and or teenagers, that you really talk about this goal-oriented kind of way in terms of behaving. Because if a goal is not, if a behavior is not helping me reach my goal, what's it doing? Right? I'm not a big video game person. I will make a PowerPoint in a minute. I've written lots of books that I haven't even finished because that's my entertainment. Because that's going to help me achieve my goal. Sometimes pushing all those little buttons and stuff, I don't know how that's helping people, reach their goal. And part of my mission is to make money so I can help the kingdom.
Amen.
Right? So I'm really focused on being goal oriented. So there's that. So how do we? The other thing that I wanted to mention was, see if it's in here. No, it's not in this one. Excuse me. Is that part of what that child also was seeking, and we're all seeking, is this concept that there are three things that we constantly are looking for. And that's a sense of significance, a sense of belonging, and a sense of safety. When we talk about human goals, when we talk about our humanity, everything that we do is to try to accomplish one of these three goals. All right? Oftentimes in companies and in schools, I talk about kind of the difference between a family and a team. Right? So how does one get significance in a family? How do you get significance in a family? Okay, being accepted. What else? How do you get significance? Responsibility. Okay. All right. I'll show you a quick way that you can get significance. Please raise your hand if you are the oldest child. Please raise your hand if you are a middle child. Please raise your hand if you're the youngest child. And raise your hand if you are an only child. Significance. Each one of those roles identified means something in your family, right? Because the oldest are always right and in charge. Right? The babies are always spoiled. They get all of everything, and then the middle kids are always confused. we're always striving for some sense of significance. Oftentimes, particularly when we talk about being ethical, what gets in the way of being ethical or acting as a person with integrity or character is the fact that somewhere in our lives we have lacked some sense of significance. So now I have some power, some control, I have some resources, I have some influence, and so since I was missing the significance, I'm going to use that significance to better and build myself. And then we get this thing called negative pride. And pride comes before what? The fall. And we're not talking about spring and summer. Okay. All right. And then also people are also seeking for some sense of belonging, being connected with other people. One of the things that I often did, particularly as a high school teacher, is when I wanted to change people's behavior, specifically high schoolers, one of the things I would do is I would separate them from the group. And the best way that I could help modify their behavior by separating them from the group is to put them right next to me. Because there's nothing worse than being right next to the teacher. But also, what I also did as a high school teacher was when I had these problem students, and I understood this about my students, was that the problem student would then become my aide. Right? Because now I can give them that sense of belonging, that they now understand that they are a part of something that's bigger than themselves. Amen. And now they have some responsibility. So all that negative power that they have, they can now use in a good direction. All right? And lastly, being an ethical person also provides people another need, which is a sense of safety. That there are boundaries that you will not cross because we're in a safe environment. There were, as a teacher, there were tons of situations where I was either taking kids home by myself. There were times when I would be out in the community and I'd see kids in distress and I'd pick them up myself and take them to their parents or make these connections. And I was able to do that because we had an understanding that there were boundaries in terms of who our personal relationships were. I have a student right now, one of my, who is now old enough to be considered a friend. I was so a part of their family life because we understood that there were certain boundaries that we would never cross. And it's ironic that I've seen teachers who have crossed some of those boundaries, and then I've seen them out in the community, and that boundary breaking was a symptom of something greater that was wrong with them. And so you see them out in the community or on Facebook doing some things that you go, oh my goodness, I didn't, I'm surprised that they could do that kind of stuff. But know that whatever is in you will be shown. All right? So, any questions so far? All right, cool. So we'll bring that out. So on page 2, there is dignity and honor in being human. What is dignity? What is dignity? How do you define dignity? What's dignity?
Value.
It's value. All right. Dignity.
Standard.
It's a standard. All right. It's your presence. All right. Is dignity something that you have or something that you can give? It is in fact both. Right? It is something that you can have. It's a self-pride. It's a way that you hold yourself. It's a value. It's in recognizing who you are, both in the world as well as in God. Who do you know that you are? Right? So dignity is something that you have, but it is also something that you can give. I live in the Twin Cities, and so in the Twin Cities, one of the things that I find on the expressways is that there are always people holding signs on the expressways, on the entry ramps and exit ramps. And what do those signs typically say? Okay? We'll work for food, need food. Yeah, I saw a guy the other day who had a sign that said "Need beer." Right. So I was almost compelled to give him some money just because he was telling the truth. Right? Almost compelled. But I see those people all the time, and so what do you think I give them? I don't give them no money. I'm not giving no money. There's too many social services. I work for the government. I know there's some services out there for folks. So I don't give money. But what I do give them is dignity. And what dignity says is that I will honor your right to exist. I might not agree with what you're doing. I might not like what you're doing. But God made you, and I have to love you. So I'm going to give you that love. And how do you think I give those people that love? I smile at them. I acknowledge that they exist. I wave at them sometimes. I mean, not in a condescending kind of way, but in a genuine kind of way that says, somebody out here is praying for you, and I know that you exist. Amen. Right? Dignity. Next is honor. What is honor? It's respect. Okay? Honor. So yes ma'am, I heard something. Yes.
Oh, no, it's like pride in yourself.
Okay, it's like pride in yourself. All right. So Senator Obama. I'm downtown Chicago. I bump into Senator Obama. I say, hey, what's going on, OB? Because that's what I call him, right? So I'm like, what's up, OB? He's like, hello, Andre. So I see him, and I give him a high five, and we do the little fist bump thing he likes to do with the exploding fingers. Right? I just gave Senator Obama respect. Senator Obama now becomes the highest office in the land. President Obama! How do I now greet President Obama? I don't. Right? Because if I tried to do it like I did with Senator Obama, it might look like this. Hey! Right? Look, Secret Service would be all over me, right? Unless I was in Florida, but that's a whole other conversation, right? So I can't approach Senator Obama the same way I do President Obama. Why? Because I have to now give him a different level of honor, a different level of respect, which is what we call honor. And so, who in our society and who in our churches and who in our families have we said that we will hold up in high respect, that we will give high respect to? Our parents, right? Our pastor, any elder, our leaders, right? We will give that high respect to those folks. All right? So there's dignity and honor. Please raise your hand if you can answer this question with a yes. All right? These two questions. Question 1. Please raise your hand if you purchased a ticket or passed a test that made you eligible to be born on this planet. So you passed the test and you bought a ticket? Okay. So it's very clear that none of us have brought ourselves here. We have all accepted an invitation. I don't want to think about how that invitation came. It's pretty disgusting. But we all accepted an invitation to come. And we're trying to figure out what is our purpose and what is it that God has for us to be. Remember I said earlier that all behavior is goal-directed. It's goal-directed because we all have a purpose. And each one of us don't necessarily have the same purpose, but we do have the same responsibility, which is to find and live out that purpose. All right? So there's dignity, honor, and being. And the last word I thought was very interesting because I had to find a definition for that word because I made some assumptions about what that word meant, but I needed to find out what it really meant. And when I found out, when I looked for the word human in the dictionary, I found two pretty incredible things. First, human is a noun and it is also an adjective. All right? And so as a noun, it talked about being a biped, walking on 2 feet, having opposable thumbs, having a big brain, and having a belly button. If you ever encounter a person without a belly button, be concerned. Be real concerned. They might have bought a ticket. Like, right? So Homo sapiens sapiens, the ones who know that they exist. And then I found that there was the second definition, which was an adjective. And what do adjectives do to the noun? They describe the noun. So what is it that we okay, so I do have to say this because I do a lot of stuff with lawyers, and one time a lawyer like really, tried to wrestle with me, right? So I do have to say this. What I don't suggest is that animals don't have a soul. I don't know that for sure, so I don't suggest that. What I don't suggest is that animals can't communicate. I don't suggest that they don't have personalities like we do, because I found that to be true with a dog I had once. He actually had a personality, which was kind of weird, to think about. And I'm not suggesting that animals can't communicate. What I am suggesting, though, that there are ways in which we expect humans to interact with. That if my dog did, I would be surprised. Right? So what are some of those ways that we expect humans to interact with each other, or that we teach our small humans, or our babies and our children growing up, how it is to be human? What are some of those things that we teach them?
Restraint.
We teach them restraint, delayed gratification, right? What else do we teach them? We teach them manners, right? What else do we teach them? We teach them right and wrong. What else do we teach them? Responsibilities. What was that? How to speak. How to interact. To have standards. We also teach them the fear of God, right? We teach them how to be respectful. And one of the things about fear that people typically kind of forget, or need to sometimes be reminded of, is that fear actually has 2 meanings as well. One is that emotional ambiguity that one might have about the uncertainty of the universe. So you have that emotional fear. But there's also the fear of respect, right? Now, I can swim, but I still have a fear of the lake. I still have a certain level of respect for the lake. Why? Because I can drown. Because it's bigger than me. It is greater than me. Now, I can work with it. I can somewhat tame it a little bit. But it is larger than me. And sometimes when we talk about our relationship with God, we don't necessarily get the frame of reference that we should consistently be in fear of God. Not necessarily having that emotional anxiety about God, but that we should have a level of awe about God, that we respect and fear that relationship that we have. All right? One of the things that often gets people into a lot of trouble is that when they are not connected, or they don't remember how they're connected to God, this becomes their God. The hurt of overcoming this becomes their God. Right? I went to a conference the other day, and they were talking about sex trafficking. And they were breaking down the psychological ways in which the pimps, and I don't know that necessarily call themselves pimps anymore, but how they get people to join in that conspiracy. And I call it conspiracy because that's what the federal government will call it when they try to when they get them in the criminal justice system, in that conspiracy, right? But because somewhere people have missed these things, the pimps know how to use that psychologically to get people to do what they want to do. Because if they can meet these needs, why do you think gangs exist? Because they can meet these needs, right? So part of our job as folks who want to be ethical is to figure out, how do we help people get these things? Yes, sir.
Right away when you said that, I immediately thought about how you related that to a family connection. And when you talk about games, and that, I guess, the relationship between the parent and, I guess they become a father figure or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a family connection.
If we can, as human beings, part of our frailty is that God used to do this for us. God was all of this for us. But somewhere along the line, when sin entered into the picture, we got amnesia about who we are as individuals. We got lost, right? And so our constant survival is dependent on trying to get back to this. How do I get back to my relationship with God, even though I don't know who He is, because I have sin? Sin has become amnesia for me, so I don't remember, what. So if I can get this in some way, I'll do whatever I need to do. Give me a pole, I'm on it, right? Give me a corner, I will own it, even though I'm not paying taxes on nothing, right? Because I can get these things. And so as people who profess to be Christ-like, we have to start figuring out, how do we do this? And one of the things that becomes very problematic is when we violate those roles. And that's the importance of ethics. Because when we violate this and this, we have a hot mess. Right? So, let me keep going. I didn't come here to preach. I came here to teach. So let's go over to page 4. So how do we start to establish this concept of ethical behavior? Well, first of all, we must know that there is dignity and honor being human, not because people look the right way, have the right clothes, or in the right social framework, but because God made them. All right? So I want to talk about 5 reasons that we typically don't get respect. Now, and 5 reasons that we typically don't get this dignity and honor for being who God made us. And this dignity and honor that helps separate us from this significance, from this belonging, and from this safety. All right? So on your table, you should see a card that looks like this. And what do you notice about this picture? What do you see in this particular picture? Okay, so you see a father and a son. Okay, so the father has a full plate of food and the son has a vegetable. All right, what else?
He's got slobbery stuff all over him.
Yeah, he's got slobbery stuff all over him. He's just a mess.
A mess.
All right, what else? Okay, so the child doesn't like what he has, but the adult does seem to. All right? Okay, so there's no interaction there. He's just off doing his own thing.
He's got the big bad look, like, with his tattoos.
Okay, so he's got the big bad look with his tattoos and all that kind of stuff. All right.
The father has all meat on his plate.
Okay, so the father has all meat on his plate.
And the child only has the vegetable.
Okay, so what do you think the child's impression of this adult is? Do you think this child could have a respectful view of this adult?
No.
Probably not. Why?
Because he's saying, do as I say, not as I do.
Okay, because you're going to say that too?
Yeah.
That because he says, he's demonstrating, do as I say, not as I do? Okay?
Exactly.
All right, any other reason why this child might not have the highest respect for this adult? It's not fair. So what does that mean, it's not fair? He has all the good stuff and the kid doesn't. He's not sharing. And the way he's carrying himself. He's like, like a little animal or something, right? Being covetous of his own stuff, right? Okay, so he's acting like a child that hasn't been taught anything. All right? So these are some of the... Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, as a father, my husband tries to model for how he wants to fulfill. So he wants him to be an image of him. And the son is more or less like the kind of image that I have.
Okay.
in father.
So the father isn't, or he is modeling but he may not be aware of what he's modeling, right? Okay, cool. So let's turn over to the back, and we want to talk about some of these reasons that we don't get respect, and we don't have the opportunity sometimes to display what it means to be ethical. All right. So first is the concept that do as I say, not as I do. That's the number one reason we typically don't get respect. Right? Why? Because sometimes you're doing the opposite of what you're telling people. Okay. What else? What's that?
Basically the same. You're not practicing what you preach.
You're not practicing. If it's not good enough for you, why would it be good enough for me? Right. You know, well, let me keep going because I'm going to go off my tangent. All right, number 3. We'll skip number 2. We'll come back to number 2 in just a second. Boys will be boys. That's how it's always been. We're doing this because this is just how it is. Right? It's full of excuses. It's not full of reason. It's not logical. You know, what if now, you know, there's a reason why the dinosaurs aren't here. They couldn't adapt to the change of the environment. And we are here. Right? And we can we can adapt. Right? So, number 4, people don't take personal responsibility for things. They say that that's not my problem. Somebody else will take care of it. But what do we know about that?
Not true.
It is so not true. Right? I lived in college. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 guys. We had a deal that if you dirtied a dish, you wash that dish. What happened? Nobody washed the dish. And at a certain point, we stopped washing the dishes just to see what would happen. And when the dishes started moving on their own, we decided we should just go back home. Right? So when everybody's responsible, guess who's responsible? Nobody. Right? So it's up to us to start taking responsibility for some of these things. And lastly, when violence is impacted or inflicted on someone, what is the residue? What happens after violence has been inflicted on someone? Pain happens. What else? Revenge happens. What else? Anger. What's that? People put up walls. What else happens? Sometimes death. Right? Hurt, pain, anguish. None of those words sound real pretty. What happens when a person has been disrespected? Is it fair to say that it would be the same thing as being physically hurt with violence? So what we've typically forgotten is that disrespect in and of itself is a form of violence. So not acknowledging somebody. Violence. Ignoring someone or not giving them your full attention. Guess what that is? That's violence. We do it all the time with our children. Right? Our children have to call our names 3 and 4 times to get our attention because we're physically there, but we're not mentally there. Violence. And then we wonder why, you know, and it's so funny, it's a lot of diversity work that I do, you know, I have parents who come up and they say, you know, well, you know, my child is acting in a racist way, but that's not how we've taught them. We've not taught them to be racist, you know, we're blah, blah, blah. And then I ask them, how many times do they call your name before you respond to them? They're modeling, and they don't even know that they're modeling. All right? So disrespect is a form of violence. So I want you to think about that in your everyday life as you interact with your kids. Because you'll say, treat everybody kind and treat everybody nice. At the same time, you're not doing that to them. Now, I believe that there are roles, that there are parent roles and there are kid roles, and everybody needs to stay in their roles and blah, 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 blah. But one of the things that we haven't been doing is that we haven't been giving our young people this by giving them our attention or giving them our time. And I have to tell you, just watching our young people grow up in the church and watching how their parents interact with them, there are kids that Their parents are in their stuff. And you're like, oh my goodness, do those kids ever get a break? And those kids are doing well outside the church, right? They're doing well in the community. And then you also see those parents that are a little freer, and their kids are a little freer too. You know, you ask them to sit down and they say, why? Well, okay, hold on. Wait a minute. Right? But we have to give those kids dignity and honor as well. And we have to model for them the kind of ethical behavior that we like to see with them. Because ethical behavior keeps us safe. Knowing what our roles are keeps us safe. So if we can reestablish this, then the gangs don't have a chance. You know, every time I work with a young person, particularly if I have to chastise them, I will tell them the truth. I tell them what I saw, and at the same time, I'm going to build them up. Right? So I saw you do this, and you talk to this kid that way, and that's not good. But I also saw you do this other thing, and I want you to continue to do that. Right? So you tear them down, and then you build them back up. All right? So that's page 4. Let's go over to page 5. So all human behavior is goal-directed. Adam and Eve had a what when it came to eating from that tree? They had a choice. They had a choice. And unfortunately, they made what? The wrong one, all right? But I believe that was a test. You know, I was like, you know, I mean, not that he was trying or that we need to try God or whatnot, but he was giving them an opportunity to see how much they loved and could communicate with them. All right? So on page 5, there's an autobiography in 5 short chapters. I want you to read that to yourself really quickly, and then we'll have a conversation about that. All right, it looks like most people have had an opportunity to read that. What were your thoughts about that reading? Yes, sir.
I was thinking about this when we were talking about we were just talking about disrespect and respect. How sometimes it's intentional and sometimes it's unintentional.
Yep.
And in this case, what I see is a graduation from unintentional to intentional.
Okay. So graduation from unintentional to intentional. What else did other people get from this particular reading? Yes, ma'am.
I certainly thought about myself and how I lived my life as I went through the years and finally coming to the realization that, and I hope this doesn't go away from the class, coming to the realization that I needed God in my life. And that all of the things that I kept doing and failing and the things that I was doing was because I didn't have him in my life. And I finally realized to stop making the same mistake and wake up.
Yes, ma'am.
What I see is kind of the same thing Mama Barbara said, but just like taking charge of your actions once you realize you're going through the same cycle, and that you have to own up to what you do and change the pattern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to change the pattern. What else?
There's a shift in thinking from placing the responsibility on somebody else to now taking the responsibility for yourself.
Okay, so there's a shift in thinking from putting the blame or the responsibility on somebody else to putting it back on you. What else? Yes, ma'am.
I think when people say you get tired of being sick tired, a lot of times you already be tired, but you ain't tied up. Then
Okay? So you're not sick and tired of being sick and tired, but then when you get tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired, then that's when you make a change. Right? There was another hand that came up over here. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I just saw the similarity with the children of Israel as they continue to go around that mountain over and over again. And they were actually building a rut. There was a rut that was going deeper and deeper and deeper until they decided to follow God, to obey what He was telling you to do. They were able to come up out of it.
Yeah, and I would imagine, using that as a metaphor, that as they were going around that mountain, building that rut, they kept saying, God, why is this mountain getting deeper? I mean, why is this mountain getting taller? It just keeps getting bigger and bigger, God. What's going on, God? Help me, God. Right? But we keep falling into those same holes, right? And so what I wanted to offer in this this particular reading was the fact that there is something that we can do to help reestablish this stuff, which we would call an antecedent. All right, which means that I do something before all of this stuff happens, and the antecedent for us. The ethical framework that we use to build our character and integrity, we call holiness. It's interesting. The Bar Association for Lawyers has a standard of ethics that says that they can't what? What are some of the things that you think might be in their code of ethics? Confidentiality. What else? You can't commit a crime. You have to tell the truth, right? So you can't be a liar and be a lawyer. You can't be a thief and be a lawyer. You can't be convicted of a crime and be a lawyer, right? You have to have these high ethical standards. What about doctors? What do you think of some of the ethical standards that doctors have to have? You have to have a training, but that's not about the ethics. That's about the training, right? So what are some of to be honest? What else? What's that? That you're private, that you can keep things under your hat, right? You don't go around tell everybody's business, right? We also expect doctors not to try to have sex with us when we're there in the office, right? I mean, we expect them to tell the truth about what our condition is, right? What about school teachers? What are some of the ethical things that we expect from school teachers? Yes. Don't date the students, right? We expect them not to date the students, right? We expect them to tell the truth. That when I get a call from my teacher, from my child's teacher, that I know that they're giving me truthful information about my child's experience, so then I can chastise my child accordingly, right? All of those things are holiness. And so everybody has these standards of their lives, and people keep wondering why they keep falling in the same holes. It's because they don't understand the ethical intentions of what holiness is. It is to keep us, it's to be our antecedent so that we don't have to keep falling into holes. And so that we can stay out of the ultimate hole, which is hell. My name is Andre Koen. My time is up. Thanks. So join us for part 2. How much time do we have left? 10 minutes? 8 minutes. So in the 8 minutes that we have, any questions, comments, observations? Oh, come on. No questions? I feel like I'm on right to start. Yes, ma'am. No. If it's not obtainable, we have to help them focus on a goal that is obtainable. We have to, or they will be lost. So, an example, you ask a kid what they want to be when they grow up. They say, I want to be an NBA star, basketball star, right? Well, how many times do you practice? How often do you run? Are you doing the things that you need to do to become this NBA basketball player? If not, then there's some other things we need to start talking about. You know, because there are people who sign NBA basketball players' checks. You might want to be one of those people who sign their checks, because typically people who sign checks make more money than the people that they're giving the checks to. But a lot of times we miss that, right? So, you know, so it is about trying to help them reshape what those goals are, what those gifts and talents are. And there's a difference between a hobby and, you know, and something that's actually going to feed my family, right? Now, it's great when those two things can be the same thing. But, yeah, if you want to be a basketball star, yeah, there's, you know, make your own videos, become an and one star. You know, you can do all that kind of stuff that you want to do. But maybe that's not for you. And I would say I'm not into dashing people's dreams or anything like that. What I am into is let's follow that dream up with some actions. So if you want to be an NBA star, I'm going to sign you up for this AAU league. You're going to go practice. You're going to do this, that, and the other thing. I need to see you doing 50 push-ups a day. You need to be dribbling that ball, because I'm going to have some expectations if that's where you want to go. Now, if you don't want to go, tell me, and then we can make some adjustments. But you got to know where you're going. So, is that helpful? Okay. Other folks? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about, you were talking about what determines your attitude and how, like, people recognize, like, if a person comes at you nasty, that they're not attaining their goal. And so I was wondering, like, what if it's a person like a boss or something, and they're coming at you like this, and what if you recognize that and the expectations that they have of you might be something that's either unholy expectations or just something that, you know, like something that is just, it can't be achievable. Like, how would you, because they're up here, like, how could you help them reach their goals or, you know, redirect, and they're open?
Yeah. Well, in a situation where there is a conflict of your personal character, you can't be expected to do something that is, particularly you use the word unholy. Mm-hmm. You can't, as an individual, you can't do that. Because we know what happens to Pharaoh, right? So they can try to get you to do some things, and you have the responsibility to live up to what you know about what is holy and what is unholy. And God will deal with them. And the wrath may come on you, but it's only going to be redirected back in their direction. All right? So in terms of our ethical standards, every time I was a camp counselor, and camp counselors, a lot of time they get into this like lovey, touchy-feely kind of thing. And every time I was confronted with people who didn't know boundaries, and I kept my boundaries, those people who didn't have boundaries before started developing boundaries because they saw that I had some. And they're like, but you didn't do this like somebody else did. No, I'm not going to. That's not who I am. That's not what I do. You mean people actually act like that? Yes, people actually act like that. You know, we can really, you know, just kick it and just hang out, right? It doesn't have to be anything more, or I don't have to go over that line. I don't even have to go up to the line because I am secure in who I am. And so I would say, know that whatever persecution comes because of the stance that you take, it may not even be for you, but for other people to see that they don't have to succumb to what Pharaoh is doing. Okay, and it's clear what happens to Pharaoh. All right. So, yes, ma'am.
What are ways you can access people's goals when you don't necessarily have a relationship with them, or say, you know, kind of, you know, the students I work with, you know, it's like, what's going on? I don't have attitude, kind of thing. Like, what are good methods or approaches that you can use to figure out what someone's goal is and how you can ask them?
Yeah. So her question was, how do you help someone achieve their goal if you don't have a relationship with them? And the short answer is you don't. Mm-hmm. To get access to somebody's dreams or their goals, you must have a relationship with them. And so how do you build that relationship? Is based a large part about who you are, right? So I would say be your centered, steadfast person, and show them kindness and love, and that will draw them to you. One of the things, particularly when I work with teenagers, is I don't tell them a lot of stuff. I ask a lot of questions of them. Because there are plenty of adults and other people who tell them, and they go, tune it out. But if you ask a question, even if they try to tune it out, it's like a worm in their brain. They can't stop it. They can't stop thinking about it. So I would say, love on them, ask lots of questions of them, and then they will be drawn to you. But you must have that relationship first. Any kind of ethical stuff, it's easy to discount and treat people bad who you don't care about. Who made us? God made us. God made us. And so that means that we're all brothers and sisters. So whatever happens to the least of us happens to the most of us. I love this economic downturn. Love it. Love it. Why? Because it shows us how much we're connected. When it first started happening, they were talking about poor people. All the poor people, they bought houses they couldn't afford. They forged their documents and blah, blah, blah. They're bringing our economy down. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, like Christmas, came Bernie Madoff, Tom Petters, Denny Hecker, all these rich, great people who have these great credit scores doing these unethical things that brought the economy to its knees. Right? So, when we forget that these things are connected and that we're connected to our brothers and sisters and we fall out of relationship with them, it's easy to become sexist. It's easy to become racist. It's easy to fight against things we don't understand and say, we need to be English only, or we need to be blah, 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 blah. When we're disconnected, it's easy to hate somebody. There's a reason why soldiers are not supposed to fraternize with the enemy. Why? It's hard to kill them. You can't kill somebody that you know their first and last name, that they had kids, that they're related to somebody, and that there's people out there that love them and care about them. And so a lot of the systems that we find ourselves in are designed to chop us up into little itty bitty pieces, which is why I love coming to this church. We're a multicultural, multiracial church, and so that's where I want to be. All right. I do believe that my time is up, and I believe that you have another. Our next session starts at what time? 10:15. So cool. So if you want to leave your stuff here, you can. Take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish part 2. Sir? Oh, nothing. Apparently she's crazy, so that was just, everybody was telling me.
Thank you, this is awesome. I was supposed to so, no disrespect to you. No.
Most of the stuff that I do is around diversity stuff. So, and just some leadership stuff as well. Yeah.
Some of the schools I work with.
Yeah. I've done some stuff with, I mean, I did stuff with schools.
But a couple of like private university language contracted out to the school. It's very interesting to see like a process where it's going on in the insurance. It's very, the contract between the schools.
Do you ever deal with any of the people in District 11? And I mean, they have us having all these different diversity classes.
Did you know Mr. Greer?
Yeah. And then,
Yeah, because I mean, he says that he's helping minorities and he wants to bring diversity and stuff. But it's like every time I go to these conferences, it's mandatory we go. They never do like any of this information that they're bringing in, which is kind of crazy. Thousands of dollars. And then working with some of the staff, and it's kind of frustrating at my job because like they thank you for this training, but you don't implement the stuff. And so I'm kind of, my granddaughter, she goes to everything, and we work in that building. So, you know, I have her doing so involved with every aspect of her education. And, you know, I will talk, meet with teachers, we talk, you know, map it out what my level of expectation is. And so there was a situation where the administrative lead, they went through like 3 different principals. I mean, and now they're going from IB school now. This new principal wants to turn into this school arts, theatrical, all this other stuff. And so they had the district chop a bunch of stuff and took the parents out. We had to take these standard tests or whatever. We didn't have so many credits or whatever. So a lot of people get displaced and around. And so the kids that are in these so-called structured things like this year coming up, now we have like a very diverse school. And so a lot of the kids, there's a lot of language barriers, whereas we have a lot of children that have parents from Liberia and so forth. And so they really don't have a person in there that's speaking the language, and then we have the parents, and then we have the parents, the American black parents that are not involved, but they're standing trying to bridge the gap with the parents involved. But none of this stuff ever happens, and it's really sad. My heart goes out being a Christian, parent, coming to the school and seeing these kids hurting and what they're going through. And then they brought this lady in who was like at a charter school over in the Minneapolis school district. Well, she's from Nigeria. She's a pretty cool person, but they bring us into good job. They had they brought all the teachers in. There's another one. I don't know if you know this professor that's over at Hamlin. I'm thinking she's from Hamlin. I can't think of her name. She has this red, black, and green. You might have came across her. She's in St. Paul. But they brought her in, and she was like so forward on, bringing out all these different things. But people, they go, well, they had us do this little paper test. Well, if you saw a child of color or a person of color, and on these different things, which would stand out, and then all of